All right, Sang. Before we start, we were talking about how you've been in this industry a really long time, but you're not as front-facing. The people who need to know about you. But can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and how you got to where you are today?
I guess summary, right? So I pretty much grew up in Guam. And my family's been here since the mid-'70s. My dad was part of the big Korean construction boom through the 80s and early 90s, and rode the Japan bubble until it popped. And during that time, I was in Southern California getting my college degree after I graduated from FD in 91, and then entered the real estate appraisal world out in California. So I was out there for roughly 23 years before moving back in 2015. So lion's share of my experience, roughly around 16 years, dealing with commercial property out in California, Arizona, and Nevada. And when I moved back, I partnered up with Nick Captain just to get my feet settled. And after getting enough geographic competency and getting refamiliar with the Guam market and the lay of the land. Started my own firm back in roughly 2017, I believe it was. So I've been back for about 10 years doing commercial real estate appraisal for a bunch of clients, mainly banks. But
All right. So you said so much in that statement that I'm going to unpack over the course of this thing, right? Number one, Korean construction boom. Okay, let's talk about that at some point. But also, you mentioned Nick Captain, right? You came up with him, and he's one of the. Talk to me about who Nick Captain was in terms of the commercial appraisal industry.
So Nick established himself, I believe, in the 90s as pretty much the premier commercial real estate appraiser on island. And he did very well. He's probably one of the smartest real estate appraisers that I've worked with, and I've worked with a lot of brilliant appraisers in my time, and he's up there. He's really good. And he eventually trained Siska, who's also, I guess we're the only two designated MAIs on the island. So Siska worked with Nick as well, and then she's, after her success, she started her own practice. And, I just kind of filled in those shoes for a couple of years. And Nick helped get me settled and into the industry. And then, he wanted to retire, and I just started my own business at that point. So
I see. Well, I know Nick and Siska very well, and if Nick's part of your coaching tree, yes. I can see. Yeah, as far as like in terms of the connection to local real estate. And it's important to know historically where we've been, how we got to where we are and where we are now. So can you talk to me about where we are now?
In terms of personally, or?
Well, no, in terms of the real estate industry on Guam. Give me industry. What's the pulse? What's the snapshot right now?
Right now, the snapshot, I would say, is uncertainty and certainty at the same time. So it's kind of, two things are happening at the same time. There's segments of the market that are very strong, that are specifically tied to the military buildup. But then the other segments are still soft because they're tied to the tourism industry, which hasn't recovered yet since COVID. So we're in this mixed situation where there's high demand for certain asset classes and speculative demand on the rest. People are just still trying to figure out what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. The strongest market currently would be industrial and residential, single family and multifamily. Mainly being there's no supply. The demand is high, but there's just no product out there. We're running out of warehouse spaces. We're running out of housing on all levels. We're running out of affordable housing for low income. We're running out of middle class housing, and there's not enough military housing. So all across the board, there's just a housing shortage that is probably not going to get addressed in an adequate manner, or in a timely manner. And no matter how much they build at this point, if you start seeing the numbers that Gura has put out and also the request for information that the military has put out, and you start piecing the puzzle together, the amount of housing that's needed within the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years, if we just went crazy and started building without even thinking about it, we probably still wouldn't meet the demand.
Which is nuts if you think about it.
Yeah.
Just a problem so significant that we have a pretty significant construction apparatus here. As I understand it, we have another $4 billion in capacity. Do you find that to be accurate?
I think it depends, right? Mm-hmm. I think the capacity right now is geared towards the buildup, and it's not geared towards the private sector.
Right.
And there is a separate market demand when it's coming to that dynamic as well, because all the capacity is focused on infrastructure and needs that the military has for the Marine buildup, for the Army buildup. And on the private sector, even though there's demand there, there's no resources being allocated out to those places.
So that denotes the question, okay, there is demand on both sides, but one demand is funded with an unlimited budget,
right?
And one demand is funded by market dynamics.
Right.
So tell me about those market dynamics. What are the market dynamics that we can rely on to make decisions now?
It's hard because on the private sector, the clearest indicator that demand is being met is when you start seeing new construction. And on the private sector, we're not seeing enough new construction to meet that demand. And inherently, there is a principle within the appraisal field. It's called economic obsolescence. And what economic obsolescence is, the cost to build something needs to be justified by the revenue that you can generate from it. So the income has to justify the cost. And every time I run those numbers since 2015, and it probably goes even well before 2015, rental rates are way too low and construction costs are way too high. That's why you never find a situation where people are building for cash flow purposes.
Right. And so that's something that I see when we're traveling. Like you say, you started commercial appraisal in California. I've spent a lot of time in West Coast California, specifically Arizona, where they're building millions of commercial warehousing for semiconductors and chips manufacturing. That's what commercial landlords do, but that doesn't happen here.
Yeah, and the cost is just too high, right? And it's a lot cheaper to put up a tilt-up building in California that they can build in like 6 months than trying to build something here that costs 3 times as much, and then it's going to take 2 to 3 years to build. So there's a lot of lost opportunities because of cost and timing, and it prohibits people from building.
But they still do.
The people that are building, though, are owner users, because they either can't find space or they want the benefit of ownership and depreciation of their asset. So then they'll build, get a loan on it, depreciate it, and in a way they're going to end up pretty much where they're at, paying rent. So it's a benefit for them to be owner users in those situations, or partial owner users. They'll build, occupy a portion, and then rent out the rest of the space to offset any kind of carrying costs or management costs, loan amounts, things like that. So
what I've just heard you say is development on Guam is predominantly driven by the end user. Mm-hmm. And so any ancillary benefit is a bonus or unintended, or we're doing this anyway, so why not build this extra square footage?
Right.
Or partnering with somebody who has a similar need or a similar use and finding the synergy there.
Right.
So can you tell me about any opportunities that you see right now, or any sectors? Well, you've already said we're overexposed.
Right.
So tell me where you think we're maybe people are missing things?
It's the market is so small that I cannot confidently say that we're missing anything in this market, because the issue with this market in Guam is we're just small and we're isolated. So if we just take a simple example like Honolulu, during COVID, when we lost all our tourism arrivals, Honolulu maintained all their tourism arrivals because the domestic travel offset the international travel, and which is still the case now. So their domestic travel is up in Honolulu, so that's why their tourism numbers are still strong. But here, we don't have a secondary market like that. It's either Japan or Korea, or it's bust, right? And the reality of that, I think everybody saw when COVID hit. And we're continuing to see it because the tourists aren't coming back because the dollar's too strong. The yen and the won are weak against it. So it's just cost prohibitive for these people to come back and travel here. So it's hard to say, is there any like missed opportunities at this point, because it's so speculative, right? If tourism recovers in the next 3 years, and in hindsight, there was so much missed opportunity, right? But what if tourism doesn't recover? What about all those speculative investors that invested, and then 3-5 years from now, nothing's really changed, right? Is that really a missed opportunity, or it's just they just didn't time the market right?
Sure.
Right. So I don't know if it's necessarily a missed opportunity, because there's no clear economic indicators that's going to say, oh, yeah, we're trending this way. This is almost guaranteed. So get in now before it's too late. Right. We don't see that in the other sectors.
And that's one of the things I've been struggling with a little bit is the cycle. Just when I first came into real estate and started practicing here, I was under this, I forget who told me, but Guam's on a 12-year development cycle, effectively. So that's historically just kind of been the arc. But I don't know if that's true or not. I can't brand that to somebody.
Right.
Tell me what you know to be the cycle. And now we've gone through all these crazy black swan events. What do you think it is now?
Well, let's take the 12-year example. We're in 2025.
Sure.
So 12 years ago is 2013. What was happening in 2013? Really nothing. Everybody was still speculating about the military buildup.
Fair.
Right? And that was kind of the point where it was taking so long. People were, should I stay? Should I exit the market? Because they bought all their stuff in like 2010, 2011, 2012, right? And then all of a sudden, this buildup's not happening. What do? Do we hold, or do we like unload? Because, it's just taking too long.
Right.
Subtract another 12 years from the 2013 number, and now we're at 2001. How much development has actually happened since 2001 to now?
Fair, yeah.
Probably not that much. Outside of single-family houses, look at major commercial assets. The only one probably is Cortex Summer Towers. And that was a failed development opportunity by a Korean investor. They ran out of money. Cortex bought it pennies on the dollar, and they have the scale to buy it cheap and build it cheap, right? They have that economies of scale working for them.
Yes.
So they made it work, right? They took a failed project and made it work. It's not, they didn't build it from the start, right? They pounced on an opportunity like that. So those might be opportunities, but very few people can play in that world. It's not for everybody, right?
Yeah, no, and I agree, but sometimes it just takes someone to kind of put all the pieces together, right? Because so, as an example, there are primes, right, who have the equipment and the capacity. They have many employees who probably make $25-$30 an hour, but probably don't own a house, right? And so how do I fix that? How do I solve a market problem that helps me and helps the market? And so, there's affordable housing problems or affordable housing programs that I'm in there. So what if we got together with other businesses and internalized that need and created, inventory for that need?
Right.
And so that's the thing. I think you're right. The community has all these endemic issues that create that limit the creation of inventory, but we as a community have needs, But we have, as a community, have capacity. It's just being directed elsewhere.
Right.
So we have to find a way to redirect that capacity back to the places where it's needed the most, and how to make it economically viable for everybody.
And that's probably the single most challenging thing to do here on Guam, because a lot of what you're talking about isn't relegated, okay, private sector, figure it out, right? There's a government component to it that sets the policies, the laws. There's certain federal laws that prohibit the type of coordination that you're talking about, where it trickles back down to everyday people.
Sure.
Right? And one main thing for Guam is we're kind of stuck under the Jones Act. And that locks in our pricing, because the shipping cost to send things here on U.S. flight ships is a huge burden, right? That cost is never going to change as long as the Jones Act is in place, right? So how do you reduce cost when there's already a high fixed cost to ship things here? You really can't, right? And then if government policies are the way that they are, where it's too much regulation, where it makes development prohibitive, then those are things that are out of the control of the people that we're talking about, right? Because we have no control over those aspects. And it's challenging. That's the biggest challenge, right? Because it's like you have to figure out how to make it cheaper, but there's already these huge obstacles for that to happen. And interest rates are high on top of that right now.
Understood.
So there's so many market dynamics that are influencing pricing and how do you even make it more efficient, right? Your question is hard to answer. Well, because if it was solvable, I think somebody would have figured it out 20 years ago.
I might crawl under the table right now into the fetal position and start rocking.
So I think if somebody could figure it out, it would have been done like 20 years ago.
Yeah, fair.
Right. Yeah. But we're so used to the status quo, and it's kind of, it is what it is mentality almost.
Well, so with that, I will say people have figured it out, right? And it's been lucrative for them. Paradise Estates has figured it out, right? Sienna Gardens has figured it out.
Yeah.
Cortec figured it out with the summer towers. The Litex have figured it out, right? That's the thing. Carlos Camacho has figured it out.
Yeah.
Kudos to Carlos, right?
Yeah.
So where there is a will, there is a way, and it's just finding those the nuance that works with the market and just fills the gaps, right? And I just think that's why we're here. We're talking about the problem, right?
Yeah.
Just to figure out those solutions, because hopefully one of you catches a thread and brings a solution to the market that really solves some of these issues that were hit us in the face every day.
Yeah, even for the Litex stuff, it's basically like 3 or 4 people that are trying to be involved in that game. And generally, Litex aren't profitable. And a lot of Litex don't pencil out in the States. The only reason why it works here in Guam is they get bonuses. They get location bonuses because we're remote. We get utility bonuses because we have high utility costs. We get land bonuses because the land costs are too high here.
Yes.
So there's these extra percentages that get tacked onto the Litex, so it still works here. And those handful of guys know that. But it's really hard to break into that Litex world. It's super hard.
Yes.
And a lot of it has to do with who's backing that group, right? And can they perform? So historically, Cortec has performed, Carlos has performed, right? So they're always going to kind of be looked on favorably. And anybody entering the market, it's going to be difficult to challenge those two established companies, right?
Right, and that's totally fair. But they found the blue ocean, right? So now getting into that water with them is competitive. It's choppy. But we can go to where they're not, and I think that's the thing about where we are. There's a lot of places where people are not, and if you have the inclination and you want to play in that space, you'll find yourself without a lot of competition.
Right.
And you'll find yourself with a fair amount of opportunity, but you just have to learn how to underwrite that opportunity to the place where you can make money.
I agree.